when you saw what Bill Shorten was promising for the lovers of dividend-paying stocks, and then you look at the implications of the Royal Commission and the potential impact it might have on banks' dividends, I guess I should come to you in a minute, Paul, and ask you whether this is a fair call. If the penalties on the banks mean that the banks actually cut their dividends, are you thinking, well, I might have to send a Christmas card to Bill Shorten and Mr Haynes and the Royal Commission, only for the sake of your business?
I'm not sure I'll be sending him a Christmas card, but I mean, I think the one advantage of this, it also highlights the concentration risk in Australia in that the four banks are all in the same industry. They're all affected by this Royal Commission. So the regulatory risk from what might come out of the Royal Commission could hit them. The regulatory risk of if the ALP can, stop the refund of franking credits is another regulatory risk that you have there. And you put those two together, it says, well, maybe people should be better diversified and have more in, whether it be property or offshore in overseas investments, if they can get reasonable income out of them.
Paul, you're our expert on banks. Do you think that if the penalties are large enough, the banks will be forced to cut their dividends?
Look, I'd be surprised. I think I'd be looking for banks, Peter, as more
as a man who's long dividends.
Well, look, I probably should disclose an interest in long bank shares. So,
who isn't?
Who isn't? So, look, I don't think they'll be forced to cut their dividends, but I still think there is some risk on some of the banks with their dividends. The main challenge the banks have, take away the Royal Commission risk, is it's just growth. Yeah. And so a number of the banks are pretty flat on earnings growth. The Royal Commission risk is going to be more about, well, if there is talk about, perhaps separation of some of their activities or government potentially getting involved, making it harder to lend money, we might get into a bit of a mini credit squeeze or something like that, it's going to be more difficult to grow. So in an environment where they are growthless, maintaining their dividend is going to be challenging for a couple of the banks. I think that's one of the risks you've got to factor in. But I think, the banking game might more come into a cost-cutting game, and it might be the banks that are best at managing their costs that are really going to be the better performers going forward. Yeah.
Well, Don, you said you have a local fund as well.
Yeah.
I know there are some people who are buying the banks on bad days, and we've often seen the price down, and towards the end of the day they've come back. Do you think we're getting close to the bottom of where banks are, or do you think this Royal Commission could knock them down another few percent?
Look, I think they look pretty cheap at the moment. So I actually have said for a while that I think there'll be some buying opportunities through this Royal Commission where people can pick up the banks pretty cheaply. I agree. I don't think they're likely to have a large cuts in dividends. I think more likely they may have to separate some assets, the vertical integration within wealth management. Yep. They may have to, sell off their planning or sell off their investment management. And we're already seeing a lot of the banks actually get rid of those things, so that selling insurance and Combank's looking to divest Colonial First State. So they're moving already, and so I think that the outcome won't be as bad as what some people are talking about, but there may be some fines. There's obviously some costs. I think ANZ today talked about $50 million the cost of the Royal Commission for them, just from the legal fees and management fees.